And we welcome Erich Merkle, who's the president of Autoconomy, who has received awards for his accuracy and production forecasts. And Erich joins us on the line from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Erich, I'm sure you're pretty happy about Michigan State's progression in the NCAA tournament. But let's get to this deal with Geely buying up Volvo. $1.8 billion is the price tag. Does that seem about right to you?
It does. It does. It's certainly Volvo is getting a lot more in the marketplace than GM was able to get with Saab or Hummer or the Saturn brand for that matter. But then again, Volvo is a much better brand than any of the counterparts from General Motors that General Motors has been trying to sell off over the months and over the years.
Yeah, but it also went for much less than what Ford sold Land Rover and Jaguar off for. I think the price tag there was $2.4 billion to Tata.
Right. Yes, and again, it's a bit of a different environment than we had when Ford sold those two brands as well. So I think, for the most part, I think Ford got a pretty good price for Volvo, all things considered, given the condition of the marketplace right now and the uncertainty that's out there. But that said, I think that Volvo can really help Geely as well, not just selling Geely in the Chinese market, but also making their base brand or the Geely brand better. There are some things that you just can't overcome. I mean, Volvo has a long history of making cars, and that's something that the Chinese could really benefit from. The engineering and design talent that is in Sweden.
Hey, Erich, you're right. Volvo does have a long history, but also has a brand reputation for safety. And now that Geely, a Chinese automaker, is taking over this brand, do you think people might have that same image still of buying a Volvo?
It's really difficult to say. It'll depend on what they do with the brand. How do they cross-market or try to bring the two brands together, or do they keep them separate? If you look at Jaguar and Land Rover and what Tata has done with Jaguar and Land Rover, at least here in the United States, they don't promote the fact that it's owned by an Indian automaker. It's Jaguar and it's Land Rover. I think that if Geely's to continue to be successful, they have to keep the differentiation between those two brands. You don't really want to promote that, the Volvo is now owned by a Chinese automaker, at least not here in the United States, where the name is going to be very important. But I think where Geely really gains in this transaction is the fact that they will be able to get and access a lot of that design and engineering talent to make the Geely product safer and better for not just China, but for the global markets as well.
Let's talk about the global markets, because Geely buying Volvo, again, gets another brand name onto its repertoire, and also Tata selling Jaguar and Land Rover. I mean, I guess between the two automakers in India and also in China, who do you think is making the better push right now into the international markets, and is this the right strategy?
Well, I think it's, I think the Chinese automakers, they have toyed around with the more of a global strategy or trying to get product outside of China and start selling it here in the United States. They've talked about being able to sell it in Europe and really take their products global, but they have run into some issues as they go forward. In fact, there's been a number of Chinese automakers that have planned to build plants here in North America, Mexico namely, and for whatever reason, a lot of those plans were delayed. There are a lot of, when you start looking at emissions and you start looking at safety standards globally, especially here in North America, the U.S. in particular, and in Europe, it's really difficult to get to bring your product and your vehicles to that level. So my expectation is Volvo is going to help Geely accomplish that.
Yeah, and Erich, it's also very
Jaguar
hard.
Land Rover.
Yeah, it's very hard to get market share right now in the U.S. But before we go, last question to you. 2010, which automakers do you think are going to outperform? Of course, Ford has been doing very well. Nice comeback for this American company.
Right. Toyota's had a lot of problems here, as you know, in 2010 early on, and that's probably going to carry on with Toyota for at least the rest of this year and cause some problems for Toyota. Ford just has a tremendous amount of momentum right now, not just here in the U.S., but globally over in Europe, and I think that they're going to perform quite well in China going forward. So I think Ford is really the automaker that is really the one to beat. Even though they aren't the largest automaker globally yet, they certainly are heading in the right direction. They've got the product lineup that's required to compete globally, and the cadence is there. The other one, I think, is Volkswagen. I think Volkswagen is probably going to continue to expand, especially with the weakness, a weaker Toyota anyway. And we're looking at Volkswagen taking a much more aggressive posture here in North America. So.
Okay, Erich, thanks for joining us. Erich Merkle, Autoconomy's president. And speaking of those